Welcome, trainer. Tonight, we're diving deep into the strangest corners of the Pokémon universe, a place where myths, glitches, and fan theories blur the line between fact and fiction. These aren't just Pokédex entries or trivia you'll find on the back of a trading card. These are the unsettling, the mysterious, and the downright bizarre stories that fans whisper about late at night. From ghost Pokémon that steal children's souls, to missing No, lurking in corrupted memory, to conspiracies about why Nurse Joy looks the same in every single city, we've got it all. Now, before we get started, here's a theory you probably won't believe. You're not subscribed yet, that's right. After all the hours you've spent watching Pokemon videos, the strangest mystery of all is why that subscribe button is still untouched. So go ahead, catch it like a wild shiny, because unlike a Master Ball, this one doesn't cost you anything. Settle in, dim the lights, and let's explore 100 Pokemon conspiracy theories that may just change the way you see this world forever. One of the most famous Pokemon conspiracies suggests that Ditto isn't just a random blob, but actually the failed result of Mew cloning experiments. Fans point to the eerie similarities. Both Ditto and Mew share the same pinkish color, identical weight, and the rare ability to use Transform. Even stranger, Ditto is commonly found in places like Cinnabar Island and Pokemon Mansion, both tied directly to Mewtwo's creation. Could Ditto simply be the discarded mistakes of the same process that brought Mewtwo to life? If true, it means every Ditto is a living reminder of human tampering, and perhaps a secret Pokemon company never wanted us to notice. Have you ever wondered why the Kanto region is full of children traveling alone with dangerous creatures, yet so few adult men are around? Fans believe it's because of a massive war that devastated the region just before the events of Red and Blue. The theory points to Lieutenant Surge, who mentions being a Lightning American veteran who fought alongside electric Pokemon. Many think the war wiped out a generation of adults, leaving behind mostly kids, as elderly people, and women. That's why professors, nurses, and gym leaders are everywhere, but fathers are almost always absent. Could it be that the Pokemon world we know is actually a post-war society rebuilding itself, with the League acting as both government and military training program for the next generation? It's one of the strangest things in the anime. No matter where Ash travels, every town has the exact same Nurse Joy and Officer Jenny. Fans joke about it, but conspiracy theorists have a darker explanation. They're clones. Imagine a government that wants to keep its citizens calm and trusting. What better way than identical friendly faces in every hospital and police station? If everyone instantly recognizes their local caretaker and protector, it builds uniform trust and authority. The Joys and Jennies could be state-created clones, programmed for loyalty, spreading a sense of continuity across the regions. Sure, the official explanation is they're just relatives, but after 20 years of identical voices, identical looks, and identical roles, the clone theory feels more believable. Look closely at Gengar and Clefable's designs, the rounded ears, the stubby arms, the general body shape. Now imagine one as the light, the other as the shadow. The theory goes that Gengar isn't just a ghost type, it's Clefable's literal shadow come to life. This would explain their uncanny silhouettes and the eerie duality between the normal and ghost typings, which are typically immune to each other. Some fans even think this was an intentional Easter egg by the original designers, hidden in plain sight. It adds a creepy layer. For every cute clefable smiling under the moonlight, there's a lurking Gengar in the dark, forever tethered as its sinister reflection. The games tell us we're reviving ancient Pokemon from fossils, but what if that's not entirely true? The theory suggests that fossil Pokemon aren't faithful revivals, but rather best guesses by scientists piecing DNA together. Like cloning dinosaurs in Jurassic Park, the gaps might be filled with modern genetic material, meaning the Aerodactyl we see today could be an inaccurate reconstruction. This explains why fossil Pokemon often look strange, aggressive, or don't quite fit into modern ecosystems. If true, these Pokemon aren't really back from extinction. They're hybrids, approximations of creatures that once existed, but not exact matches. In other words, the Pokemon world may be filled with living scientific guesses, parading as prehistory reborn. Team Rocket's presence in casinos across Kanto is more than just a shady front for crime. It could be the key to their entire operation. The theory suggests that Rocket's casinos launder money for genetic and technological experiments. Think about it. A constant flow of cash from gambling, slot machines, and prizes that conveniently turn into high-value items like TMs. It's the perfect cover to wash dirty money into legitimate revenue streams. That money could then fund expensive research, like the cloning projects behind Mewtwo or the weaponization of Pokemon like Genesect. The fact that you, the player, can win rare and powerful Pokemon at these casinos only deepens the suspicion. Are these creatures bred in secret labs, distributed as gambling rewards to test their abilities? Rocket's gambling empire isn't just crime. It's a research and development pipeline hiding in plain sight, wrapped up in the glitz of neon lights and slot machine sounds. Lavender Town's syndrome is one of the most infamous Pokemon urban legends. According to the creepypasta, the original music from Pokemon Red and Green caused children in Japan to suffer headaches, anxiety, and even worse outcomes. While the story is fiction, it draws from a real event, the infamous Electric Soldier Porygon anime episode in 1997 that triggered seizures in hundreds of children. That event planted the seed for the Lavender Town myth years later. The eerie, high-pitched tones of Lavender Town's original music, combined with the ghostly setting of the Pokemon Tower, made the story believable enough to spread like wildfire online. It became a classic internet legend, blending truth and fiction. While no evidence supports Lavender Town syndrome as real, the fact that it borrows from an actual incident is what makes it so unsettling. It shows how Pokemon's creepy edges can spark myths that feel almost too close to reality. Every time you defeat a trainer in the games, you mysteriously receive prize money. But where does all this cash come from? One conspiracy suggests Pokemon centers act as the hub for laundering these payouts. Think of it. A child defeats an adult in a Pokemon battle and suddenly earns thousands of Pokédollars. Yet that adult happily hands it over without complaint. The theory claims the league pumps money through trainers via staged prize systems, and Pokemon centers are where it all gets processed. The slot machines, item stores, and healing services conveniently create endless transaction records, disguising what's actually a large-scale redistribution of wealth. The prizes and in-game economy might simply be the League's way of funneling resources while training the next generation of battlers. If true, Pokemon centers aren't just healthcare, they're banks, casinos, and money washing facilities rolled into one. No wonder there's one in every single town. Hypno's Pokedex entries have always stood out as some of the darkest in the series. Multiple games reference Hypno using its pendulum to put children to sleep and even leading them away. While written as lore, the theory suggests these entries are a sanitized retelling of a real incident within the Pokemon world. Perhaps long ago, there was a scandal involving psychic Pokemon being misused to manipulate or abduct people. Instead of erasing it, the League turned the story into a warning packaged as a Pokedex entry. Over time, it became mythologized as, "That's just what Hypno does." It's chilling to think that some of the stranger Pokedex entries may be echoes of actual tragedies, rewritten into folklore for young trainers. Hypno, with its eerie stare and pendulum, serves as a constant reminder that not all Pokemon lore is innocent. Some of it might be the sugar-coated version of something much darker. Unknown are already mysterious, alphabet-shaped Pokemon with almost no combat use. But one popular theory takes them further. Unknown don't just look like letters, they literally alter reality by spelling it out. Each unknown could be a symbol of programming language, like the building blocks of the Pokemon universe itself. When arranged together, they might form commands that shape dimensions, time, and space. In Pokemon lore, Unknown appear alongside powerful legendaries, like Entei and Lugia, almost as if they're drawn to moments of rewritten history. Fans see this as evidence that Unknown are less like creatures and more like operators in the system, a kind of living code. If true, the walls of the ruins of Alph weren't made to contain them, they were written by them. That means every phrase or puzzle we solve could just be Unknown adjusting the world around us, bending reality one letter at a time. Shedinja is one of the strangest Pokemon in existence. When Nincada evolves into Ninjask, a Shedinja simply appears in the player's party if there's space and a Pokeball. But Shedinja isn't just a bug husk, it's a hollow shell inhabited by something else. Its Pokedex entries describe it as an empty vessel that steals the spirit of anyone who peers inside. This has led to the theory that evolution doesn't just create a new form, but can actually split a soul. Ninjask continues with the original essence, while Shedinja becomes a parasitic echo, a lifeless puppet powered by whatever fragments of spirit were left behind. If true, then evolution isn't a clean transformation at all. It's spiritual division, leaving behind ghosts of what the Pokemon once was. That makes Shedinja less of a bug Pokemon and more of a terrifying reminder that not all change comes without a price. Pokeris is one of the rarest phenomena in the Pokemon world, a microscopic virus that infects Pokemon and enhances their growth. Unlike most real viruses, Pokeris is purely beneficial, doubling the effort values a Pokemon earns in battle and leaving no negative effects behind. To many, that's suspiciously convenient. The conspiracy goes that Pokeris isn't natural at all. It was engineered. Perhaps the League or a shadow group designed it as a controlled experiment, a way to boost training efficiency while studying its spread. Its rarity could simply be a built-in control mechanism, ensuring it doesn't get too widespread. If true, every trainer lucky enough to catch Pokeris isn't witnessing a miracle of nature. They're part of a massive biological experiment hidden in plain sight. The fact that the virus is Mysterious even to scientists, in-game almost feels like a wink, suggesting they know more than they're letting on. Team Plasma presented themselves as liberators, arguing that Pokemon deserved freedom from human trainers. At face value, it looked like a noble if extreme philosophy. But conspiracy theorists believe this was all a smokescreen to distract the world from their darker projects, like creating Genesect. According to lore, Genesect was an ancient fossil Pokemon that Plasma heavily modified with armor and weapons, turning it into a controllable bioweapon. If that's true, then their Pokemon liberation message wasn't about freedom at all. It was propaganda designed to make the public sympathetic, while Plasma tested dangerous experiments behind closed doors. The irony is chilling. While preaching about giving Pokemon independence, they were creating one of the most enslaved creatures imaginable. This would mean that Plasma wasn't a misguided activist group. They were a full-on weapons program disguised as animal rights crusaders. Their entire philosophy could have just been a cover story for something far worse. Most people know the infamous Electric Soldier Porygon episode as the reason Porygon virtually disappeared from the anime. The episode featured a rapid strobe effect that caused seizures in hundreds of viewers in Japan, leading to it being banned worldwide. But here's the conspiracy twist. The flashes that triggered the seizures didn't come from Porygon at all. They came from Pikachu's electric attack. In other words, Pikachu was the true culprit. Why then was Porygon scapegoated and effectively erased from the anime's future appearances? The theory suggests that the Pokemon Company couldn't risk damaging Pikachu's brand, since he was already the franchise mascot. So instead, they pinned the blame on Porygon, a relatively unimportant Pokemon, and quietly buried him. This decision protected Pikachu's reputation, but condemned Porygon to obscurity. If true, it's less about what caused the seizures and more about brand management at its most ruthless. Rotom is a mischievous little ghost / electric Pokemon that can possess household appliances, transforming into new forms. On the surface, it's a clever gimmick. What if your washing machine or microwave had a Pokemon living inside? But some fans suspect there's something much darker going on. What if Rotom appliances are actually test beds for surveillance AI? Think about it. These Pokemon inhabit everyday objects that sit in your home, constantly watching you. In the real world, we already worry about smart devices and data collection. The theory goes that in the Pokemon universe, Rotom serves the same role, normalizing the idea of Pokemon, and by extension, corporations or the League monitoring citizens through their own household tools. Its playful personality might just be cover for its true purpose, learning everything about your habits. If that's true, Rotom isn't just a fun gimmick. It's Big Brother, hiding in your fridge. The Elite Four are often portrayed as the pinnacle of Pokemon battling, the ultimate challenge for any trainer seeking glory. But what if their true purpose goes beyond sport? A conspiracy theory suggests that the Elite Four are actually gatekeepers for the trafficking of legendary Pokemon. By presenting themselves as powerful trainers, they ensure only the strongest and most loyal reach the inner circles of the League. Those who pass may gain access to information or even encounters with legendaries, while those who fail remain outsiders. This transforms the Elite Four from simple competitors into a filtering system, handpicking who is trustworthy enough to hold such power. Their lavish facilities and exclusive status could be less about prestige and more about secrecy. In this light, the Elite Four's role is far darker. They are guardians of a carefully controlled trade in the world's most powerful beings, disguised as a championship tournament. Kubona's story is already tragic. It wears the skull of its dead mother. But a deeper conspiracy suggests Kubone isn't just mourning. It's actually the orphaned baby of Kangaskhan. Look closely. Kubone's body shape, cries, and eventual evolution into Marowak bear striking similarities to Kangaskhan's child that usually stays in its pouch. The theory goes that when a Kangaskhan dies, its baby becomes a Kubone, using its mother's skull as a helmet. If true, this would mean an entire evolutionary line was split or reclassified, hiding the fact that Kubone is the product of death and loss. It explains why Kubone doesn't seem to fit neatly into its own family tree, and why its Pokédex entries emphasize grief. What looks like a standalone Pokémon might actually be the living remnant of a broken family line. It's a heartbreaking possibility that turns one of Pokemon's most sympathetic characters into proof of hidden biological tragedy. Legendary Pokemon are almost always genderless, presented as unique, divine figures beyond normal biology. But what if that genderless status is a deliberate lie meant to prevent black market breeding? The theory suggests that by declaring legendaries genderless, the Pokemon League creates an artificial scarcity. If these Pokemon could breed, their offspring would flood the world, shattering their mythical status and destabilizing the balance of power. By coding them as genderless, the League enforces a strict monopoly, ensuring that legendaries remain rare, unbreedable, and nearly impossible for trainers to replicate. This also explains why some legendaries still have species-like traits, despite supposedly being one of a kind. The truth may be that they can breed, but society has chosen to suppress it, preserving their status as living legends while quietly eliminating the risk of exploitation. It's less about divine uniqueness and more about controlling who has access to unimaginable power. Ghost Pokemon have always felt like outliers in the Pokédex, tied to death and the supernatural. But what if they are more than just spooky designs? A conspiracy suggests that ghost Pokemon are actually reincarnations, each evolution representing a new step in the soul's journey. For example, Fountump is said to be the spirit of a child lost in the woods, evolving into Trevenant as a guardian tree. Ghastly becomes Haunter, then Gengar, each step showing a spirit becoming more corporeal, more independent. If true, ghost evolutions aren't just power-ups, they're spiritual transformations, echoes of the cycle of rebirth. This theory reframes the entire ghost typing. They aren't monsters at all, but fragments of lives that once existed, reshaped into new forms. Every encounter with a ghost Pokemon could be a brush with someone who lived before, carrying their past life into the present battle in a new and eerie form. Bagon is a small, dragon-like Pokemon known for throwing itself off cliffs in an attempt to fly. While this is usually seen as a quirky bit of lore, some fans believe it carries a deeper implication, that Pokemon can literally rewrite their biology through sheer desire. Bagon dreams so intensely of flying that when it evolves into Salamence, it suddenly grows wings, achieving what it wanted most. This isn't just evolution, it's willpower shaping reality. If true, it means Pokemon aren't bound strictly by genetics or environment, but by their inner spirit. Dreams, ambition, and longing can alter their very form. It reframes evolution not as a scientific process, but as something closer to magic, where determination itself manifests as physical change. Bagon isn't just a stubborn little dragon. It's proof that in the Pokemon world, belief is powerful enough to change biology, turning wishes into wings. Mimikyu is one of the saddest and most unsettling Pokemon ever designed. According to lore, it disguises itself as Pikachu because it longs for the love that the mascot receives. But conspiracy theorists take it further, suggesting that Mimikyu is actually grief made manifest, born out of the obsessive wave of Pikachu merchandise and cultural worship. Think about it. Pikachu is everywhere, printed on toys, shirts, balloons, and games. In this theory, Mimikyu represents the discarded scraps of that obsession, a ghostly presence formed from loneliness and neglect. Its cloth disguise isn't just a costume, it's a tragic attempt to copy fame it can never achieve. If true, Mimikyu is less of a quirky ghost type and more of a cultural spirit, an entity born from society's obsession with a single Pokemon. Every time someone buys a Pikachu plush, they may be feeding the legend of Mimikyu, the unwanted shadow that craves attention but only receives fear. Shiny Pokemon are usually treated as rare treasures, prized for their unusual colors. But one theory suggests these alternate forms aren't natural mutations, they're radiation scars. In particular, the red Gyarados at the Lake of Rage is cited as proof. In the games, this shiny outbreak occurs after Team Rocket experiments with radio waves, artificially forcing Pokemon to evolve. What if shininess isn't a genetic fluke, but evidence of exposure to radiation or experimental tampering? That would mean every shiny Pokemon a trainer encounters might be a victim of unnatural forces, carrying permanent marks of interference. Their rarity could be less about chance and more about the small percentage of creatures that survived these conditions. This theory makes shinies less of a prize and more of a grim reminder that the Pokemon world isn't always whimsical. Sometimes, those sparkling colors might be the lasting scars of experiments gone wrong. In the games, certain Pokemon only evolve when traded between players, like Machoke or Kadabra. On the surface, it's a fun mechanic encouraging social interaction, but some fans believe it was never about lore, it was a patent lock. Back when Pokemon was first released, the Game Boy Link cable was brand new. By tying evolution to trading, Nintendo ensured that players had to buy the cable and connect with others to fully complete their Pokédex. In other words, evolution by trading wasn't just a creative idea, it was a business strategy. This makes the mechanic feel less like magic and more like marketing, a way to sell hardware through gameplay design. While it's since become a nostalgic part of the series, the theory suggests it was born from profit, not story. Every time you evolved a Pokemon by trading, you weren't just connecting with a friend, you were feeding Nintendo's hardware sales. Spiritomb is one of the eeriest Pokemon in the series, bound to a stone and said to be composed of 108 souls. On the surface, it's just a spooky number, but conspiracy theorists suggest it mirrors ancient legal and religious rituals around sealing spirits. In Japanese and Buddhist traditions, the number 108 represents earthly temptations and sins. By binding exactly 108 souls, Spiritomb becomes not just a monster, but a living representation of restraint and punishment. It's possible Spiritomb was once created deliberately, a magical prison designed to contain dangerous entities within a keystone. If true, then trainers aren't just catching a ghost/dark Pokemon, they're capturing a cursed artifact that holds fragments of guilty spirits. Its existence implies that humans in the Pokemon world had rituals for dealing with evil long before the League existed, and Spiritomb is the lasting proof of a punishment system rooted in spiritual law. Arceus is often described as the god of the Pokemon universe, wielding plates that allow it to change into any type. But one theory reframes these plates not as divine relics, but as licenses of jurisdiction. Each plate isn't about elemental power, it's about legal dominion over a particular aspect of creation. Holding the flame plate might grant authority over fire Pokemon, while the splash plate covers water Pokemon. In this view, Arceus doesn't just shift types, it shifts its legal control. The plates are like divine permits, authorizing it to act within specific domains. If true, Arceus isn't a free god. It's bound by cosmic paperwork, able to operate only in areas it has licensed. This theory turns Arceus from an all-powerful being into something more bureaucratic, ruling not through limitless energy, but through a system of ancient cosmic law. The universe, then, may be less about chaos and more about regulated divine order. Missing No is one of the most infamous glitches in gaming history, appearing in Pokémon Red and Blue as a scrambled, blocky figure. But fans suggest it's more than just a glitch. It's corrupted memory, the game's map data misread as a monster. The theory goes that when the game pulls information from the wrong spot, it manifests as Missing No, a ghost in the machine. Its ability to duplicate the sixth item in your inventory fits this perfectly, as it's pulling garbage data into reality. But that corruption isn't harmless. It can distort your Hall of Fame records permanently, leaving eerie signs of its existence, even after you move on. In this sense, Missing No isn't just a mistake. It's the game remembering wrong, trying to piece together lost or broken data. Players didn't just encounter a glitch, they encountered a digital ghost, a reminder that memory itself can become monstrous when fragmented. The Pokédex is presented as an authoritative encyclopedia, but when you really read its entries, something feels off. Take Magcargo's body temperature, supposedly being hotter than the surface of the sun, or Wailord being light enough to float like a balloon. These are clearly exaggerated, maybe even impossible. The conspiracy goes that the Pokédex deliberately inflates numbers to capture kids' imaginations, not to record accurate data. Professors might encourage exaggeration as a way to inspire awe, or perhaps to mask the truth. By making Pokémon seem impossibly powerful, the League ensures respect, and maybe fear, among the people. It could also be a cover to disguise sensitive information, like downplaying dangerous traits while hyping up harmless ones. If true, the Pokédex is less of a scientific record and more of a propaganda tool, shaping perception as much as it informs. What trainers trust as fact might actually be carefully designed fiction. Eugene, the eccentric character from Pokémon Crystal, is obsessed with tracking down the legendary Pokémon Suicune. At first glance, he's just a quirky rival with a fixation, but some fans theorize that his hunt wasn't personal at all, it was funded. Suicune, as a legendary tied to water and purification, would be a symbol of enormous prestige for any region that could claim it. The theory goes that Eugene was backed by government, or league sponsors, tasked with securing Suicune not just for himself, but for national pride and power. His obsession then wasn't madness, it was policy. This reinterprets Yusin not as a fanboy, but as an operative, using his passion as cover for political motives. If true, Suicune wasn't just a legendary Pokemon, it was a prize in an invisible arms race, and Yusin was the face of a much larger and more calculated campaign. Kalos is known for its emphasis on style, glamour, and fashion, an unusual cultural obsession for a Pokemon region. But one theory argues that this isn't just a quirk of culture, it's coping. Kalos was also the site of a devastating war, tied to AZ and his ultimate weapon that wiped out countless lives centuries earlier. The idea is that Kalos' obsession with fashion is a post-war trauma response. After enduring violence and despair, the people of Kalos threw themselves into beauty, art, and luxury as a way to heal. It's a familiar pattern in human history, where devastated societies often embrace art or extravagance to reclaim joy. If true, every boutique and runway in Kalos isn't just frivolous, it's a cultural bandage over deep scars. Fashion wasn't just about looking good, it was about survival, turning collective pain into a glittering facade that masked the region's lingering trauma. Wobbuffet has always been an odd Pokemon. It doesn't attack directly, only countering opponents, and its design is so strange. Its bright blue, blobby body seems like the main form, but the conspiracy suggests otherwise. The real Wobbuffet, according to this theory, is its little black tail with the eyes. The blue body is nothing more than bait, a decoy designed to absorb hits while the true creature hides safely behind it. Supporting this, Wobbuffet doesn't actually fight. It only reflects damage, as if the tail is the cautious controller and the blue blob is a disposable puppet. If this theory is right, every battle with Wobbuffet is really a trick. You're not fighting the Pokemon itself, but a stand-in. Its silly comedic appearance masks a much darker truth. The creature you're targeting is never really in danger. The real Wobbuffet is always watching from the shadows of its own tail. Aziz's ultimate weapon is remembered as the terrifying machine that ended the ancient war of Kalos, wiping out armies with a single pulse of power. But some believe it didn't simply end the war, it erased the memory of it. The idea is that AZ's weapon wasn't just destructive, it was also manipulative, altering minds across the region so the true horrors of the conflict would be forgotten. This would explain the vague, fragmented stories about Kalos' past, and why so little remains of such a massive event. If this theory is true, Kalos isn't a peaceful land living in the shadow of war. It's a region living in deliberate ignorance, its people stripped of memory to prevent rebellion or grief. The real legacy of the ultimate weapon wouldn't be destruction, but enforced amnesia. Kalos's beautiful cities and glittering culture might be built on a foundation of collective forgetting, the past erased to ensure no one questions the present. Voltorb is one of the simplest and strangest Pokemon designs, a living Pokeball with eyes. But why does it look that way? One theory claims Voltorb are actually failed Pokeball prototypes that gained consciousness. Sylph Co. and other corporations could have experimented with energy containment, accidentally creating creatures when prototypes malfunctioned. This explains Voltorb's explosive behavior. It isn't fighting, it's a defective device unable to stabilize itself. The fact that Voltorb are found in power plants and abandoned facilities supports the idea, as if these rejects were tossed aside only to come alive. If true, every Voltorb is a reminder of corporate recklessness, a living accident still roaming the wild. Their resemblance to Pokeballs wouldn't be coincidence. It would be their origin, the shell of a tool that went wrong. This theory makes Voltorb less of a quirky design and more of a haunting side effect of human invention gone too far. Mr. Fuji, the kindly old man who cares for Pokemon in Lavender Town, is one of the most beloved characters in the series. But a darker theory suggests his past isn't so innocent. Some believe Mr. Fuji is actually an ex-Team Rocket scientist living in hiding. He knows far too much about the bond between humans and Pokemon, and his compassion for Kubone and Marowak seems tied to knowledge of human cruelty. The Pokemon Tower, where he spends his time, might be his personal atonement, caring for the souls of Pokemon harmed by experiments he once took part in. His secrecy, his solitary lifestyle, and his sudden wisdom all add fuel to the idea that he left Rocket after witnessing horrors, choosing instead to dedicate his life to making amends. If true, Mr. Fuji isn't just a kind caretaker. He's living proof that Rocket's corruption reached deep, and some of its own turned against it. The ruins of Alph are filled with unknown, strange Pokemon shaped like letters. The puzzles inside seem designed for trainers, but what if they weren't built by humans at all? A theory suggests the unknown themselves created these puzzles after discovery, reshaping the ruins into language and symbols to manipulate reality. Instead of ancient people building a temple for unknown, perhaps the unknown colonized the ruins, bending the environment to spell messages that influence the world. This would explain why the puzzles seem alive, unlocking hidden chambers when solved, as though the ruins are responding directly to the player. If true, the unknown aren't relics of a forgotten civilization. They're active forces, rewriting space and stone around them. The ruins of Alph, then, aren't a tomb or a shrine. They're a living document, constantly edited by a species that communicates by reshaping the world itself. What looks like archaeology might actually be reality itself changing. Articuno, Zapdos, and Moltres are revered as legendary birds, embodiments of the elements. But a conspiracy suggests they're not gods of nature at all. They're weather-controlled drones, engineered from fossil DNA. Their appearances often coincide with extreme storms, lightning, and blizzards, almost like they're triggers rather than natural phenomena. If corporations or governments created them as weapons of climate manipulation, it would explain why they can be captured despite being legendary. Perhaps their legendary status is just a cover story to keep people from asking questions about their origins. The fossil theory connects here too. What if these birds were reconstructed creatures, modified to serve as controllable engines of destruction? Their legendary status could simply be propaganda, elevating them to mythical figures to distract from their artificial roots. If this theory is true, the most famous bird trio in Pokemon history aren't gods at all. They're experiments in weather warfare, soaring reminders of human interference in nature. One of the strangest details in the Pokemon world is how trainers never seem to age. Ash has been 10 years old for decades, and in the games, protagonists never appear to grow older during their journeys. The conspiracy suggests this isn't just storytelling convenience. League journeys distort time. Perhaps traveling with Pokemon creates a temporal bubble, slowing aging for trainers immersed in battles and adventures. This could explain why professors, gym leaders, and villains appear older while protagonists remain frozen in youth. The idea is that the act of bonding with Pokemon bends time itself, preserving trainers until their journeys conclude. Once retired, maybe they suddenly catch up, aging rapidly when removed from the distortion. If true, the Pokemon League isn't just a test of strength, it's a manipulation of time, trapping generations of trainers in eternal adolescence while the world moves on around them. A dream for kids, but maybe a nightmare for everyone else. Mega Evolution was introduced in Kalos as a powerful mechanic, but the Pokedex entries hint at something sinister. Some describe Pokemon crying out in pain, their forms twisted unnaturally. The theory suggests Mega Evolution wasn't a gift at all, but Kalos weaponizing the bond between humans and Pokemon. By forcing this surge of power, trainers unknowingly subjected their partners to suffering, all in the name of strength. It's no coincidence that Kalos was also the site of AZ's ultimate weapon, a region with a history of experimenting with life and energy. Mega Evolution could be the continuation of those experiments, a system disguised as partnership but rooted in exploitation. If true, every time a trainer uses a Megastone, they're reenacting Kalos's darkest history, turning love and trust into a battlefield weapon. What looks like evolution is really just war technology wrapped in a shiny new package, hiding pain behind sparkling animations. The red chain introduced in Sinnoh is said to be capable of controlling the gods of time and space, Dialga and Palkia. But what if it wasn't just a mystical artifact? The theory suggests it was advanced technology, specifically designed as a form of enslavement. Crafted from crystals said to resonate with the Lake Trio, the red chain may have been humanity's attempt to hack into the very code of creation. This would reframe the Sinnoh mythos not as a tale of harmony, but as evidence of mankind's desire to dominate the divine. If true, then Team Galactic wasn't the first to try it. They were simply reviving an ancient tool designed to bind gods like puppets. The red chain then isn't a relic, it's a shackle, proof that the people of Sinnoh once sought to enslave beings that should have been untouchable. The real conspiracy isn't that it exists, but that it worked. Team Yell in Pokémon Sword and Shield is portrayed as a silly group of rowdy fans cheering for their favorite trainer, Marnie. But some believe this was no accident. The theory goes that Team Yell was a distraction psyop created to mislead and contain true rebellion. In a region like Galar, where corporations and the League dominate society, dissent could easily rise. By introducing a fake team that's loud, chaotic, and ultimately harmless, the League creates the illusion of troublemakers while keeping the real rebels disorganized and ignored. It's controlled opposition, misdirecting potential anti-League sentiment into cosplay hooliganism. This would explain why Team Yell never truly opposes the League, and why their antics feel shallow compared to groups like Plasma or Rocket. If true, Team Yell isn't just a joke. They're a tool of propaganda, a convenient circus act to ensure no one looks too closely at the cracks in Galar's glittering stadium system. Whenever you leave Pokemon at the daycare, the attendant sometimes tells you they've found an egg. The official story is that Pokemon breed there, creating new partners. But the conspiracy suggests this is all plausible deniability. Instead of natural breeding, the daycare may be part of a coordinated program run by professors and the League. Eggs appear not because Pokemon are mating freely, but because scientists are conducting controlled experiments, monitoring genetics, and redistributing Pokemon to trainers under the guise of breeding. The vague message, "We found an egg," hides the truth that something much more clinical is happening behind the scenes. It's a cover story, allowing the League to manage reproduction while trainers believe it's just nature taking its course. If true, every egg you hatch isn't just a cute surprise, it's a manufactured creature delivered through a sanitized explanation that keeps you from questioning the real source of your partner. Lavender Town is infamous for its ghostly atmosphere, the Pokémon Tower, and its unsettling music. But one conspiracy reframes those ghosts as something far stranger, glitched save data. In the games, encountering ghosts before obtaining the Sylph Scope shows them as unidentifiable corrupted figures, almost like scrambled sprites. Some fans believe this isn't just a gameplay mechanic, but a metaphor for corrupted memory. The souls of Pokemon aren't resting in the tower, they're fragments of data, broken pieces of life stuck between existence and deletion. In this view, every ghost trainer meets isn't a spirit haunting the world, but leftover save data that never properly cleared after death. That's why they seem distorted, unreadable, until you have the right tool to decode them. If true, Lavender Tower isn't a haunted graveyard. It's a server room of corrupted memory where the dead linger as unfinished files. The Pokemon world, then, might be as much digital as spiritual. Porygon Ziz is an unsettling Pokemon, looking like a distorted, unstable version of the original Porygon line. Its Pokédex entries even describe it as having behaviors no one can fully explain. The theory goes that Porygon Z is software corruption given life, the result of too many patches. Originally, Porygon was designed as a digital Pokemon, capable of existing within cyberspace. But when upgrades were pushed onto it, through items like the dubious disc, it destabilized, just like software that's been updated one too many times. Instead of improvement, it became buggy, unpredictable, and strange. This makes Porygon Z less like a Pokemon and more like malware, a living virus born from human tinkering. If true, trainers aren't raising digital Pokemon anymore, they're hosting corrupted code. The very existence of Porygon Z would prove that Pokemon can glitch, just like the games themselves, and that human interference has created a creature forever broken by its own patches. The distortion world in Sinnoh is one of the most bizarre places in the series, a dimension where gravity flips, platforms float, and everything feels wrong. While it's presented as Giratina's domain, some fans theorize it isn't a mystical realm at all. It's a broken server room. The idea is that the Pokemon world itself is a kind of coded reality, and the distortion world is what happens when the system crashes. Broken textures, unnatural physics, and disjointed spaces are classic signs of corrupted files. Giratina, then, might not be a god of antimatter, but rather a guardian or byproduct of this glitching reality, living in the leftover fragments of corrupted code. If true, the distortion world isn't another dimension, it's debug space, the Pokemon universe's equivalent of unfinished or broken programming. Trainers exploring it aren't venturing into a spiritual realm. They're walking through the cracks in the system itself, where reality no longer runs correctly. Melton, the tiny metallic Pokemon that looks like a nut with a liquid body, has puzzled fans since its introduction. Some see it as a quirky design, but others suggest something much creepier. Melton are nanobots. Each one is a tiny piece of a larger machine, swarming together and merging into a single entity. When enough Melton gather, they form Melmetal, essentially a giant nucleus of living metal. The theory goes that Melton weren't natural Pokemon at all, but artificially created machines designed to self-replicate. Their coins aren't parts of their body, they're components waiting to converge. If true, Melton isn't just a Pokemon, it's a hive mind, a living swarm designed for construction, control, or even warfare. The Pokemon world may see it as another quirky mythical, but in reality, Melton might be evidence of nanotechnology that someone, whether human or divine, unleashed. Every Melton caught is just one piece of a much larger and possibly dangerous whole. Castform is a small, weather-themed Pokemon that can change its form based on current conditions: sun, rain, hail, or normal skies. On the surface, it looks like a fun gimmick to show off Hoenn's weather system. But some theorists believe Castform isn't a natural species at all. It's proof that humans can manipulate the weather. According to the lore, Castform was created by the Weather Institute, a research group experimenting with atmospheric control. This makes Castform less of a wild creature and more of a scientific experiment designed to adapt to artificial weather patterns. If true, it would mean humans in the Pokemon world already possess advanced climate engineering technology, and Castform is just the test subject. Its cute appearance hides the fact that it was born in a lab, created as evidence of human ability to bend nature to its will. Every time Castform shifts form, it might not be nature reacting, it might be technology flexing. Eugene is remembered in Pokemon Crystal as the eccentric man obsessed with Suicune, chasing the legendary across Johto. But what if his obsession wasn't personal at all? A conspiracy suggests Eugene's hunt was a cover for research tied to Sinnoh. Suicune, a being linked to water purification, could hold secrets that connect to Sinnoh's lake trio and their role in shaping the world. By disguising his mission as personal obsession, Eugene may have been sent by researchers or the League to gather data quietly. His fixation becomes the perfect mask. Who would question a crazy fanboy? If true, Eugene wasn't acting alone, but as an operative feeding information to those with larger ambitions. His constant pursuit of Suicune wasn't about admiration, it was espionage. Behind his flamboyant speeches may have been a mission designed to connect Johto's mythology with Sinnoh's, a silent bridge between regions where legendary research was already shaping the future. The Pokewalker, a pedometer bundled with heart gold and soul silver, seemed like a fun bonus accessory. It let players transfer a Pokemon and earn experience or items just by walking in real life. But some fans see something darker. The device showed that trainers themselves are the batteries powering Pokemon. Every step was converted into energy for the Pokemon world, turning human activity into fuel. This blurs the line between who trains whom. Are we raising Pokemon, or are they draining us? The Pokewalker could be evidence that humans and Pokemon are locked in a symbiotic relationship where humans provide motion, energy, and effort while Pokemon benefit. If true, the Pokewalker wasn't just a fun gadget, it was an experiment, testing how easily people would hand over their real-world steps to power creatures in another world. In this light, Trainers aren't just companions to Pokemon, they're their energy sources, batteries and sneakers keeping the system alive. The lucky egg has always been treated as a blessing, a rare held item that grants extra experience points to the Pokemon carrying it. But what if it isn't a gift at all? The theory suggests the lucky egg is actually an energy siphon, extracting power from the Pokemon instead of giving it. By forcing the holder to learn faster, it drains their life energy, accelerating growth unnaturally. The benefit to trainers is obvious: faster leveling, stronger partners, but the cost might be hidden within the Pokemon itself. Its exhaustion or shortened lifespan could be the unspoken side effect, masked by the reward of extra experience. If true, the lucky egg is less of a prize and more of a parasitic object, quietly taking from the very creatures it's supposed to help. What looks like luck may actually be exploitation, proof that even the most treasured items in the Pokemon world can hide sinister secrets. The Safari Zone is remembered as a quirky area where trainers throw rocks, bait, or balls instead of battling. But fans have long wondered, why those strange mechanics? A conspiracy theory suggests the Safari Zone wasn't a friendly game. It was a wildlife control experiment. Throwing rocks could be a way to study aggression, while bait measured food responses. The Pokeballs, meanwhile, weren't about capturing, they were tracking attempts. In this view, the Safari Zone was less of a fun minigame and more of a government lab disguised as entertainment, testing how Pokemon react under different stimuli. The randomness of capture could reflect the unpredictability of wild ecosystems under stress. If true, every trainer who paid a fee to enter wasn't just playing, they were unwitting participants in research. The Safari Zone wasn't a preserve, it was a lab where both Pokemon and people were subjects in experiments hidden behind the cheerful facade of a safari adventure. The old chateau in Sinnoh's Eterna Forest is a famously haunted mansion filled with ghostly figures and eerie atmosphere. One of its strangest features is the TV in the back room where Rotom can appear. While officially just a way to encounter this special Pokemon, some fans believe the TV was more than a gimmick. It was a broadcasting node. The theory goes that Rotom wasn't just hiding in the television, it was using it to send out signals, like a paranormal antenna. The old chateau could have been a testing site, a place where Rotom experimented with transmitting itself across machines, foreshadowing its later forms inhabiting household appliances. If true, the TV isn't just haunted, it's a prototype of communication, a device Rotom used to reach into the wider world. In this sense, the old chateau isn't simply spooky lore, it's a technological origin story where ghosts meet signals and a Pokemon becomes a broadcaster of its own existence. The battle frontier in Hoenn and Sinnoh introduced some of the toughest opponents in the Pokemon series. These trainers seemed almost superhuman, predicting strategies, using bizarre teams, and executing flawless tactics. A theory suggests they weren't human at all, but early AI prototypes disguised as trainers. Each frontier brain wasn't just a quirky boss, but a test of artificial intelligence in battle. Their mechanical precision and strange dialogue patterns fit this idea, as though they weren't speaking naturally, but following coded routines. If true, the battle frontier wasn't a competitive facility. It was a testing ground where trainers unknowingly battled against AI meant to simulate and surpass human skill. The technology later reappears in forms like the Battle Maison and the Battle Tower, hinting at a continuity of experiments. These facilities weren't about fun, they were data collection. Every battle fed into perfecting trainer AI, making the league less reliant on humans and more reliant on algorithms. Kalos's Parfum Palace is remembered for its grandeur, fountains, and gardens, a palace obsessed with appearances. But some believe this extravagant landmark hides a darker secret. It's a front for fossil smuggling. Kalos is home to many ancient Pokemon like Tyrant and Amora, revived from fossils. The palace's wealth and ties to historical collections suggest it could have funded illegal excavation and trafficking. By presenting itself as a cultural hub of beauty and luxury, the Parfum Palace masks the flow of rare and endangered fossils into private collections or labs. Trainers visiting only see the glittering halls, while in the background, ancient bones and DNA samples are traded at enormous profit. If true, the palace isn't just a showcase of Kalos wealth, it's a pipeline of prehistoric exploitation. Every fossil Pokemon revived might come at the cost of one illegally dug artifact, covered up by a society eager to polish its image with perfumes and palaces. The Pokéradar in Diamond, Pearl, and Platinum lets players chain Pokemon encounters for higher shiny chances. At first glance, it's just a gameplay mechanic, but some fans believe it was more than that. A way for developers to leak knowledge of how random number generation works within the Pokemon universe. Each chain raises shiny odds, as though the trainer is exploiting a hidden algorithm. This theory reframes the mechanic not as luck, but as proof that the game world itself runs on code-like systems. Trainers using the Pokéradar aren't just spotting Pokemon, they're hacking reality, manipulating probabilities by chaining encounters. If true, the Pokéradar wasn't just an item, it was a tool left deliberately in the hands of players, showing them that shiny odds, spawns, and encounters aren't random at all. Instead, they're scripted systems, waiting for those clever enough to exploit them. In this sense, the Pokéradar is the closest trainers get to peeking behind the curtain of the Pokemon world. The Sinnoh Lake Trio, Uxie, Mesprit, and Azelf, are said to embody knowledge, emotion, and willpower. But some fans believe this isn't mythological at all. They represent personified data types, like functions in a system. Uxie as read stores information, Mesprit as write modifies memories and feelings, and Azelf as execute provides the will to act. Together, they form the basis of sentience, just like commands form the basis of software. This theory suggests the Lake Trio aren't gods, but data constructs, guardians of the underlying code that makes life possible. If true, Sinnoh's mythology is really a metaphor for programming, life and consciousness as operating systems running on divine code. It reframes their role in the Red Chain too, as if they're not lending power, but granting access keys to the system. The Lake Trio, then, are less mythical sprites and more like administrator accounts in the Pokemon universe, each embodying a critical part of existence's programming language. The daycare has always been presented as a cozy place to leave your Pokemon, where they get along and sometimes produce eggs. But a darker interpretation suggests these pairings aren't natural, they're arranged by professors. The theory goes that Pokemon breeding isn't about love or instinct, but about controlled experiments. The vague message, "we found an egg," is deliberate, avoiding specifics about how it appeared. In reality, professors could be orchestrating genetic programs, deciding which species are paired, and tracking the results for research. Trainers think they're casually leaving Pokemon to be cared for, but they're really participating in studies on inheritance, traits, and compatibility. If true, every egg is less of a miracle and more of a lab product, delivered to the trainer as a reward for their unknowing participation. The daycare's cheerful exterior hates a breeding program run by the very people players trust most, the professors who claim to study Pokemon in the name of science. The Sylph Scope is described in the games as a device that lets you see ghosts. Before using it, the spirits in Lavender Tower appear as unrecognizable, glitched shapes. With it, they're revealed as Ghastly, Haunter, or Cubone's mother. But what if the Sylph Scope isn't revealing ghosts at all? It's just applying augmented reality filters. The theory suggests that the ghosts are nothing more than corrupted overlays, scrambled data that the scope decodes into familiar Pokemon models. In this way, the device doesn't let you see spirits. It assigns an understandable form to corrupted code. This would make ghosts less like supernatural beings and more like data glitches within the Pokemon world. If true, the Sylph Scope doesn't prove the existence of the dead. It proves that with the right technology, anything can be given a form. Ghosts may not haunt Lavender Tower at all. They may be the result of a machine projecting data back into reality. For years, rumors swirled online about Lavender Town's original theme song hiding spectrogram messages when run through audio software. Supposedly, these images revealed unknown characters spelling out eerie words like Leave or Comehome. But in truth, this was fan-forged creepypasta, blending a real urban legend with an invented discovery. Unknown didn't even exist until Generation 2, yet the myth persisted, shared across forums as if it were a hidden feature in the earliest games. The theory suggests this creepypasta thrived because it fit perfectly with Lavender Town's reputation, eerie music, tragic lore, and ghostly themes. Fans wanted to believe the soundtrack itself contained hidden secrets, and so the story spread like wildfire. While it's not real, the fact that so many accepted it shows how easily Pokemon's darker edges can spark myths. In the end, the Lavender Town spectrogram tale wasn't a glitch or Easter eggs. It was proof that fans themselves could shape the creepiness. In Legends, Arceus, the Hisuian region, is plagued by space-time distortions, rifts that connect eras, bringing Pokemon from the future into the past. The story frames these as divine or cosmic events, but some theorists believe they were artificially created. The idea is that ancient societies, or even the gods themselves, experimented with time, producing tears in reality. The consistency of the distortions, spawning specific Pokemon like Porygon or Magnemite, suggests design, not chance. If true, Hisui wasn't experiencing natural phenomena. It was living inside the fallout of deliberate tampering. These rifts could have been the earliest experiments in dimensional travel, precursors to portals like the distortion world. That means the player isn't witnessing nature, but walking through the scars of failed projects, echoes of someone trying to rewrite history itself. The time rifts, then, aren't acts of Arceus. They're evidence of something more dangerous, humans or higher beings experimenting with the very fabric of time. Gym puzzles are usually presented as fun challenges before facing a leader, but some fans argue they're actually hazing rituals designed as indoctrination by inconvenience. Think about it. Whether it's teleporting pads, trash can switches, or invisible walls, the puzzles serve no purpose except to test patience and compliance. The theory suggests the Pokemon League uses these obstacles to weed out trainers who won't follow orders or endure arbitrary rules. It's not about solving a puzzle, it's about proving obedience to the system. Trainers who persist are rewarded with badges and advancement, while those who give up never rise in the ranks. If true, gym puzzles aren't quirky design choices, they're psychological training, turning free-spirited kids into loyal participants in the league's structure. Every hidden switch or ice tile is less about fun and more about control, teaching young trainers from the start that success means enduring pointless hardships imposed by those in power. Pokerus is famous among fans as the only beneficial virus in the Pokemon world, doubling a Pokemon's effort values gained in battle. But this theory suggests Pokerus isn't about growth at all, it's about trauma. Effort values are gained when a Pokemon defeats specific opponents, essentially scars that shape how they grow. Pokerus accelerates this process as if the virus makes those scars deepen more quickly. If true, Pokerus isn't a miracle, it's an intensifier of stress and hardship, turning every battle into a harsher imprint on the body. This would explain its rarity. It's not common because most Pokemon couldn't survive its effects. Trainers see it as a gift, but in reality it may be a hidden danger, amplifying the suffering that defines growth. The shiny little Pokerus icon might not be a badge of luck, but a warning label, proof that power in the Pokemon world often comes only through scars. The stadiums of Winden in Galar are presented as sporting arenas, where trainers gather for massive tournaments. But one conspiracy suggests they're far more than entertainment. They're ritual arenas designed to pacify legendary energy. The Dynamax phenomenon, tied directly to Galar's power spots, draws energy from the ground itself. By channeling that energy into stadium battles, the League may be redirecting dangerous forces into controlled spectacles. Trainers and Pokemon become part of the ritual, burning off excess power in the form of dramatic fights. The cheering crowds aren't just spectators, they're part of the ritual too, grounding and stabilizing the flow of energy. If true, then the Galar League isn't just about sport. It's a carefully managed ceremony to prevent disaster. Every tournament is less of a competition and more of a controlled release valve, keeping Eternatus's destructive energy in check by disguising it as entertainment for the masses. Zorua and Zoroark are known for their ability to create illusions, disguising themselves as humans or other Pokemon. But what if these illusions aren't just visual tricks? Some theorists argue that Zorua's powers are actually mass hypnosis, affecting the minds of everyone nearby simultaneously. Instead of projecting images, Zorua manipulates perception, rewriting reality in the minds of its victims. This would explain why its illusions seem flawless, fooling entire groups without error. If true, Zorua isn't just a tricky fox. It's a psychological weapon capable of altering collective memory and vision. In this view, Zoroark isn't conjuring holograms, but bending thought itself. It could even mean that whole communities might live under illusions without realizing it, their perception carefully shaped by a single Pokemon. The idea that one small creature could control not just what you see, but what you believe, makes Zorua far more terrifying than its mischievous Pokedex entries let on. The darkest day in Galar is remembered as the cataclysmic event caused by Eternatus, a Pokemon that nearly destroyed the region. According to official accounts, the heroes stopped the disaster and the menace was sealed away. But some believe this story is a cover-up. The theory suggests Eternatus wasn't truly defeated, it was merely managed, its energy still influencing Galar. The widespread use of Dynamax could be evidence of this, as the League may be tapping into Eternatus's power intentionally, repackaging danger as spectacle. By framing the darkest day as a long-past event, the authorities hide the truth. Galar still lives under Eternatus's shadow. If true, Dynamax battles aren't harmless competitions. They're controlled leaks of apocalyptic energy. The League, instead of protecting people, is normalizing exposure to this threat, disguising it as tradition. Every glowing giant Pokemon in Wyndon Stadium could be proof that the darkest day never truly ended. It just became entertainment. Pokeballs have always been one of the greatest mysteries of the Pokemon world. Officially, they shrink Pokemon for storage, allowing trainers to carry them easily. But one theory reimagines how they really work. Pokeballs don't store bodies, they store states. Instead of physically capturing a creature, the device records the Pokemon's current data, health, abilities, and consciousness, compressing it into digital form. When released, the Pokemon isn't the same body. It's a recompiled state, reconstructed from stored information. This would explain why fainted Pokemon can be healed instantly at a Pokemon Center. It's not fixing their wounds, it's resetting their saved state. If true, then every Pokeball is less of a container and more of a save file. Trainers don't carry their partners, they carry the blueprint of their partners, reloaded whenever needed. This would make every battle less physical and more like code manipulation, turning Pokemon into living data preserved across infinite resets. The red chain from Sinnoh's Legends is said to be an artifact capable of controlling Dialga and Palkia, gods of time and space. While the games frame it as mystical, a darker theory suggests it was pure technology, a tool created by humans to enslave gods. Crafted from crystals resonating with the Lake Trio, the red chain may have been a synchronization device, hijacking the divine code of reality. Instead of reverence, it represents humanity's audacity, proof that technology had already outrun ethics. If true, Sinnoh's myths are not about harmony, but domination, where people didn't worship their gods, they shackled them. Team Galactic wasn't inventing anything new. They were reviving an ancient practice of binding deities to human will. The red chain stands as evidence that humanity in the Pokemon world has always tried to control forces far beyond its understanding. And maybe, just maybe, those gods still remember the chains once forced upon them. Calyrex, the kingly Pokemon from the Crown Tundra, is said to rule alongside one of its steeds, Glastrier or Spectrier, depending on the bond formed with its trainer. But a conspiracy reframes this legend in a darker light. The steeds weren't natural partners, they were failed fusion projects. The Reins of Unity, an item essential to merging Calyrex with its horse, could be evidence of experimental attempts to bind creatures together. Spectrier and Glastrier may represent discarded prototypes, incomplete versions of an ideal fusion. Calyrex's weakened state in the present might be the result of countless failed merges, with only fragments of its original power remaining. If true, the majestic fusion we see in the games isn't a miracle of legend. It's a reminder of biological tampering. The Crown Tundra's lore, then, isn't about bonds between kings and steeds. It's about the messy legacy of failed experiments, where power was forced rather than earned. The Pokeathlon in Johto was introduced as a cheerful sporting festival, giving trainers and Pokemon a chance to compete in events like hurdles, ring drops, and stamina races. But one theory suggests it wasn't harmless fun. It was designed to replace military conscription. Historically, Johto might have trained citizens for combat, but after war, the league shifted to entertainment-based conditioning. By framing it as games, they ensured children and Pokemon would grow disciplined, strong, and loyal to commands without recognizing the militaristic undertones. Events like endurance and speed could easily double as battle drills, hidden under the guise of sport. If true, the Pokeathlon was less about fun and more about national preparedness, a way to ensure every child was battle-ready without realizing it. Johto's smiles and cheers in the stadium could mask the quiet training of an army, ensuring the next generation is physically fit and obedient while believing they're just playing games. The Poke-Flute is portrayed as a whimsical instrument that wakes sleeping Pokemon, most famously Snorlax. But a darker theory suggests it doesn't just stir Pokemon from naps, it hacks their brainwaves. Sound frequencies are known to influence brain activity in real life, and the Poke-Flute could be designed to override natural states of consciousness. Instead of waking Snorlax, it's stimulating neural pathways, forcing the creature to change states against its will. If true, the Poke-Flute is less of a magical melody and more of a tool for psychological manipulation. The fact that it works instantly, even on massive creatures, supports the idea that it's tuned to frequencies that Pokemon can't resist. This would make the Poke-Flute a subtle form of mind control technology, dressed up as a charming item. Every time a trainer plays its tune, they aren't just making music, they're reaching into the brain of a Pokemon and flipping its switches. Officer Jenny is as ubiquitous in the Pokemon world as Nurse Joy, appearing identical in every city. The official explanation is that they're relatives, but a conspiracy suggests they're clones deliberately engineered to enforce trust. Humans instinctively trust familiar faces, and by populating every city with identical Jennies, the League ensures people feel safe and compliant no matter where they travel. Their authority becomes unquestioned because it's always the same face speaking the same rules. The Jenny clones may not even need to be perfect law enforcers. Their presence alone is psychological conditioning. If true, the Officer Jenny network isn't about keeping order through power, but through recognition. Every repeated encounter with the same appearance builds loyalty to the system. The Pokemon world, then, isn't protected by police officers. It's managed by clones designed to look trustworthy, removing individuality in favor of uniform obedience. Trust isn't earned, it's manufactured, enforced by an endless line of familiar smiles. Evolution stones are often described as natural minerals infused with elemental energy, allowing Pokemon to evolve into stronger forms. But one unsettling theory suggests they're not natural at all. They're rebranded nuclear waste. The glowing fire, water, and thunderstones could easily be radioactive materials repackaged as items. Their effects on Pokemon, sudden dramatic mutations, resemble radiation-induced changes rather than natural growth. The theory goes that the League or corporations discovered a way to use this dangerous waste product, passing it off as a mystical tool to hide its toxic origins. Trainers, believing they're performing a natural ritual, are really exposing their Pokémon to hazardous energy. If true, then every stone evolution is less about destiny and more about forced mutation, using leftover byproducts of technology to trigger transformation. What looks like magic could simply be a dangerous material reshaping life, its side effects hidden behind the glamour of glowing stones sold in stores. Ghost-type Pokémon have some of the strangest evolutions in the series. Ghastly becomes Haunter, then Gengar. Duskull becomes Dusclops, then Dusknoir. A theory suggests these evolutions aren't just power-ups, they're reincarnation milestones. Each stage represents a spirit passing into a new phase of existence, climbing a ladder of rebirth. Ghastly is a wandering spirit, Haunter a mischievous poltergeist, and Gengar a shadow fused with the living. Instead of leveling up, these Pokémon are evolving through the spiritual cycle itself. If true, every ghost-type trainer isn't just raising a monster, they're guiding souls on their journey through reincarnation. It reframes Pokémon battles as metaphysical tests, shaping the next stage of a soul's journey. Ghost evolutions, then, aren't just gameplay mechanics. They're glimpses into how the Pokémon world interprets life after death, with each evolution marking a new chapter in a never-ending cycle of existence. The Pokénav, introduced in Hoenn, was marketed as a simple communication tool with features like maps, trainer's eyes, and even radio. But one theory suggests its microphones are always recording, feeding data back to the League. By analyzing trainers' voices, habits, and even private conversations, the League could build psychological profiles to predict loyalty, disobedience, or battle strategies. This would explain why trainers in the Pokémon world are so quickly scouted for contests, battles, or tournaments. The League already knows their strengths and weaknesses. If true, the Pokénav wasn't just an innocent gadget, it was surveillance equipment, embedding itself in the lives of every young trainer under the guise of convenience. The cheery ringtone wasn't just a call, it was proof that the League was always listening, always watching, and always collecting. In this view, every trainer's journey wasn't just tracked by badges, it was monitored step by step, word by word, through their own device. Alolan Marowak is one of the starkest regional differences in the Pokémon series. Instead of the ground type we know, it becomes fire/ghost, carrying flames as weapons. The theory suggests this isn't just adaptation, it proves that grief itself can imprint biology as a type. The loss of its mother, already central to Marowak's lore, manifests so deeply in Alola that the Pokémon's very essence changes. Fire symbolizes anger and pain, while Ghost reflects lingering sorrow. Together, they show how emotional trauma rewrites existence. If true, then typing isn't simply about genetics or environment. It's about emotional resonance, carved into the Pokémon's body by its experiences. Alolan Marowak isn't just a variant. It's living evidence that suffering can permanently alter life, making type less of a biological fact and more of a psychological scar. The implication is chilling. Trauma itself can crystallize into elemental reality, shaping what a Pokémon is at its very core. The name Raider, found in various towns across regions, allows trainers to change their Pokemon's nicknames. It seems like a simple, fun feature, but some fans think it's much darker. The theory suggests the name rater isn't renaming Pokemon at all, he's editing their legal identity. In a world where Pokeballs, registries, and data systems track every creature, names might serve as unique identifiers. By altering them, the name rater may be rewriting official records, effectively changing who that Pokemon is in the eyes of the League. If true, this isn't just cosmetic, it's hacking the system, granting trainers the power to rebrand a creature's entire legal existence. The name rater, then, isn't a quirky old man. He's a gatekeeper of identity, quietly holding the power to erase, rewrite, and redefine any Pokemon at will. What looks like harmless fun may actually be one of the most unsettling powers in the entire Pokemon world. Yuzin's endless pursuit of Suicune across Johto is one of the strangest storylines in Pokemon Crystal. He dedicates his life to chasing the legendary, never stopping, never questioning. But some believe this wasn't genuine obsession at all. It was staged by the League. The theory suggests Yuzin's pursuit was a controlled narrative, designed to inspire trainers to chase legends themselves. By watching his flamboyant speeches and relentless determination, young trainers would learn that the League's ultimate goal wasn't just badges, it was reverence for legendary Pokemon. Yuzin, then, becomes less of a fanatical hunter and more of an actor, placed by the League to keep attention fixed on myths. If true, Yuzin wasn't chasing Suicune, he was bait, a mascot created to direct the ambitions of Johto's youth. His failure to ever catch Suicune wasn't incompetence. It was part of the script, ensuring the legend remained untouchable while still driving curiosity and devotion. Pokemon contests in regions like Hoenn and Sinnoh are presented as glamorous competitions where trainers show off beauty, cleverness, and coordination. But some believe these pageants are nothing more than corporate talent shows masking research and development. Behind the sequins and music, companies observe how Pokemon respond to costumes, stage effects, and artificial environments. Each move combination may be data used to design new products, Pokeball tech, or battle mechanics. The applause and ribbons keep trainers distracted, but the real winners are the corporations collecting performance metrics. If true, contests aren't about showcasing creativity. They're field tests disguised as entertainment, where Pokemon are prototypes and trainers are unpaid volunteers. While kids see glitter and fame, executives see spreadsheets of data about move interactions, lighting effects, and crowd response. Pokemon contests may not be celebrations of talent at all. They might be boardroom experiments under stage lights, with ribbons as rewards for unwitting research subjects. Pokemarts sell potions, Pokeballs, and revives, but their prices are strangely consistent across regions. A conspiracy suggests this isn't natural market behavior, it's price fixing. The League and corporations may deliberately keep revival items expensive to limit supply and demand. If revives were cheap, fainting in battle would lose consequence, and trainers could endlessly recycle their teams. By keeping prices high, the League ensures scarcity, making battle outcomes feel meaningful while still profiting off desperation. The uniform prices across towns hint at monopoly control, with local merchants forced into standardized rates. If true, Pokemarts aren't just stores. They're part of a carefully designed economy that ensures dependency. Every trainer digging through their pockets to buy a single revive isn't just paying for survival, they're feeding a system that thrives on scarcity. What looks like fairness and convenience is really manipulation, turning healing items into premium commodities meant to drain wallets as much as restore Pokemon. Missing No is one of the strangest phenomena in Pokemon Red and Blue, a glitch that can duplicate the sixth item in your bag. Fans usually treat it as a fun exploit, but the underlying theory points to a buffer overflow glitch, a technical error where memory is overread and spills into unintended areas. In the Pokemon world, though, that error becomes a monster. Missing No represents data breaking its boundaries, bleeding from one space into another. The duplication of items isn't magic, it's proof of corrupted memories spilling over, rewriting reality itself. If true, Missing No isn't a creature, it's an accident given form, a walking error born of the game's fragile code. Trainers who use it may be more than lucky. They may be tampering with the very foundations of their universe, bending its storage systems until they snap. What seems like a harmless bug becomes terrifying when reframed. It's reality collapsing in on itself, temporarily rewritten by overflow. Rotom phones, introduced in Galar, act as helpful gadgets guiding trainers with maps, features, and even voices. But one unsettling theory suggests they're not helpers at all, they're surveillance devices. By fusing Rotom, a ghost/electric Pokemon known for inhabiting machines, into every phone, the League ensures all trainers carry a living spy. Rotom doesn't just power the device, it listens, records, and reports. This would explain why trainers are always conveniently tracked, scouted, or interrupted by League officials. The phone is feeding them constant data. If true, every Rotom phone isn't a convenience, it's a leash. Trainers think they're independent adventurers, but in reality, they're under constant observation by a cheerful ghost embedded in their pocket. The creepy part? Rotom has a mind of its own. That means your smartphone isn't just surveillance tech. It's a living thing watching you, deciding what to share, and maybe even manipulating what you see. The Galar League didn't give trainers phones, they gave them spies. The ruins of Sinnoh, like Salation's chambers, are filled with unknown and strange signals. Some fans believe these ruins aren't just archaeological sites, they're radio stations, broadcasting programming into reality. Unknown, shaped like letters, could be living code, and their presence in clusters suggests they're composing messages too complex for humans to understand. The radio static sometimes associated with these ruins may not be noise at all, but commands, rewriting space, objects, or even memories. If true, the ruins weren't built by ancient humans. They were constructed by Unknown themselves, using architecture as antennae to beam their language outward. The Lake Trio, Dialga, Palkia, even Arceus could all be responding to this code, shaped by unknown transmissions hidden in plain sight. In this light, exploring the ruins isn't about history, it's about eavesdropping on an active signal, still broadcasting, still running the Pokemon universe like a script. What trainers treat as ruins may actually be the operating system of reality. The daycare is always presented as a safe place to leave Pokemon while they gain levels passively. Trainers are told they grow simply by being cared for, but the conspiracy suggests something darker. The daycare secretly levels Pokemon by battling other children's pets behind the scenes. Instead of care, These Pokemon are being used in controlled skirmishes, testing strategies and compatibility while trainers are away. The vague, "your Pokemon grew a few levels" message is the cover up, hiding the fact that daycare staff may be running underground training exercises. If true, then the daycare isn't a peaceful farm. It's a low stakes arena where Pokemon train against each other without consent. Eggs, levels, and stats aren't random outcomes, but the results of unmonitored battles fought while trainers aren't looking. The sweet old couple smiling at you from the counter might actually be managers of a secret training ring, ensuring Pokemon grow strong under the guise of gentle care. Paldea's Terrastal phenomenon introduces sparkling crystals that allow Pokemon to change type mid-battle. It's framed as a regional wonder, but some fans argue the whole phenomenon is just a mining operation disguised as spectacle. The crystals trainers use aren't natural at all. They're extracted resources, refined into tools that mask their industrial origins. By glamorizing terrestrialization with glittering crowns and rainbow effects, Paldea hides the fact that it's exploiting natural resources. The League may be stripping the land of these crystals, using trainers as the cover story to justify endless mining. If true, every time a Pokemon terrestrializes, you're seeing the product of extraction, not magic. The glitter isn't wonder, it's propaganda, disguising industrial greed as cultural pride. And Paldea may be dressing up a mining industry in bright colors to distract from the truth that the phenomenon isn't a gift of nature, but a resource drain that could leave the region barren when the crystals finally run dry. The red Gyarados at the Lake of Rage is iconic, a shiny Pokemon encountered by nearly every Johto trainer. But the fact that it exists at all suggests something far more sinister. The conspiracy says the outbreak of shinies at the lake was an open-air experiment conducted by Team Rocket. Using radio waves to forcibly evolve Magikarp, they triggered mutations, some of which resulted in shiny coloration. In this view, the red Gyarados wasn't luck, it was a victim of human tampering. The theory suggests that Rocket didn't care if the Pokemon survived. They wanted to test how many would mutate under exposure. If true, the Lake of Rage wasn't a natural event. It was a laboratory without walls, a giant field test in which hundreds of Pokemon were tortured in plain sight. The shiny outbreak, then, isn't a quirk of Johto's story. It's evidence that humans in the Pokemon world run experiments on wild populations, hiding cruelty behind legend. When Fairy type was introduced in Generation 6, it seemed like a natural evolution of the type system, something to balance out the overpowered dragons. But a theory suggests Fairy type wasn't designed for lore or balance. It was a narrative retcon. Dragons had dominated competitively and thematically for years, portrayed as unstoppable forces. By introducing a new type immune to dragon, Game Freak essentially rewrote the rules of the world, turning mythology on its head. This reframing isn't balance, it's propaganda. In this theory, fairy Pokemon didn't just appear, they were recognized by the League to deliberately undercut dragon trainers' dominance. If true, fairy type is less a natural discovery and more a political move, proof that the League can change reality itself by declaring new categories. Every dragon that once symbolized unmatched power was humbled overnight, not by nature, but by decree. The fairy type wasn't born, it was invented to rewrite history. Professor Oak is remembered as the kindly old man who sends young trainers off with their first Pokémon and a Pokédex. But what if his research isn't about studying everyday species at all? A theory suggests Oak's work is really about legendary containment. By encouraging children to gather data on as many Pokemon as possible, Oak builds vast surveillance networks, mapping habitats and movements of creatures too powerful to leave unchecked. The starter Pokemon and Pokedex aren't gifts, they're bait, tools to turn children into data collectors. If true, Oak's grandfatherly persona hides the truth. He's orchestrating a continent-wide containment strategy, using kids as his field agents. Legendary Pokemon aren't rare because they're hard to find. They're rare because Oak ensures their locations are hidden, their secrets suppressed. The professor isn't cataloging life, he's controlling it. Trainers think they're on a journey of discovery, but they may actually be soldiers in Oak's quiet war to keep gods under control. Melton was introduced as a small, strange steel-type Pokemon, but it rarely appears alone. It naturally gathers in swarms, and when enough Melton merge, they become Melmetal, a towering steel giant. This behavior has fueled a theory that Melton colonies aren't natural at all. They're test beds for swarm AI systems. Each Melton acts like a node, part of a collective mind that grows more complex as more are added. Instead of one creature, it's an experiment in distributed intelligence, showing how simple units can form a powerful whole. If true, Melton may not even be organic. It may be artificial nanotech seeded into the wild to study cooperation and self-assembly. The implication is chilling. Whoever created Melton wasn't just making a new Pokemon, they were testing whether living swarms could function as machines. Melmetal then isn't an evolution, it's proof of concept, the end result of a hive mind successfully merging into one entity. The Great Pokemon War is a long-standing theory explaining the eerie absence of adults in Kanto. The idea suggests that a massive conflict wiped out much of the older generation, leaving behind children, soldiers, and Pokemon. Cubone is often cited as tragic proof. Its lore already describes it as an orphan wearing its mother's skull, but in this theory, Cubone isn't just an individual tragedy. It's a symbol of thousands of children and Pokemon left behind by war. Gyms and the League could then be interpreted as remnants of a militarized culture, with badges functioning as ranks rather than sports prizes. If true, Kanto isn't a cheerful world of adventure. It's post-war reconstruction built on loss and trauma. The silence around the war is intentional, a cultural cover-up to protect children from the horrors of their parents' battles. Every smiling face in Kanto hides a ghost, and Cubone wears the war's grief on its head for all to see. Missing gnomes is often explained away as a glitch, but many fans see it as something deeper, Kanto's ghost in the machine. It appears when the game tries to recall data from memory slots that don't exist, producing scrambled fragments of information. The conspiracy suggests Missing No isn't an error at all. It's the residue of memories deleted from Kanto itself. Each blocky sprite, each duplication glitch is the result of the system trying to remember Pokemon that were once there, but erased. In this view, Missing No is a ghost not of a single creature, but of an entire forgotten reality. Trainers don't just see a glitch, they're glimpsing fragments of data that should have been gone forever. If true, Missing No is proof that the Pokemon world runs on fragile memory, and that sometimes deleted history fights its way back to the surface. It isn't a mistake, it's a haunting, a reminder of stories that never should have been erased. Azaz Floette is one of the strangest Pokemon in the series. Unlike other Floette, this one has lived for centuries, bound to AZ through the power of the ultimate weapon. The story frames it as a symbol of his grief, but some fans take it further. Floette is a war memorial brought to life. Instead of dying, it became an eternal monument, tied to the energy that ended Kalos's war. Its immortality is less a blessing and more a curse, forced to carry the weight of loss forever. If true, then AZ's companion isn't just a Pokemon, it's a relic infused with the pain of millions. Every time it floats at his side, it isn't a partner, it's a reminder, a constant echo of the destruction unleashed by human hands. Floette's unusual form and longevity mark it not as a survivor, but as a symbol, the embodiment of war's grief, trapped in endless time. Regional variants like Alalan Marowak or Galarian Wheezing are often explained as natural adaptations to new climates. But one conspiracy argues they're not simple, environment-driven changes. They're evidence of climate collapse. The drastic differences in typing, appearance, and behavior reflect ecosystems that have been warped by human interference. Pollution, deforestation, and industrialization forced Pokemon to evolve unnaturally fast, creating variants out of necessity. If true, regional forms aren't charming cultural quirks, they're warning signs. Galarian Weezing's smoke filters, for example, aren't just cute, they're survival responses to toxic air. Alolan Pokemon, shaped by volcanic activity and altered ecosystems, may be living proof of a collapsing balance. Instead of celebrating these forms, trainers should fear them as evidence of irreversible damage. Regional variants, then, aren't evidence of Pokemon thriving. They're proof that the natural world is breaking down, and creatures are mutating in desperation to survive humanity's mistakes. Whenever a trainer wins a battle, they're rewarded with prize money, as if their opponent simply hands it over. But this theory suggests the money doesn't actually come from other trainers. It's insurance payouts disguised as cash. The League may have policies in place that cover battle losses, ensuring no trainer is ever truly bankrupt from defeat. By framing it as prize money, the League masks what's really a structured insurance system, quietly funneling resources through every match. This would explain the consistent amounts trainers receive, and why even random kids on a route have cash to hand over. If true, then Pokemon battles aren't just about skill, they're about economics, with the League managing payouts to keep kids motivated while maintaining the illusion of personal stakes. Every victory might just be a claim processed behind the scenes, insurance money disguised as prize cash, keeping the cycle of battling profitable and endless. In Paldea, Titan Pokemon are massive, overpowered creatures linked to the Herba Mystica. But the conspiracy argues these giants aren't natural at all. They're hormone test disasters. The Herba Mystica may have been a cover for chemical enhancement, substances designed to accelerate growth and boost abilities unnaturally. The Titan Pokemon, then, are victims of tampering, their massive size and unusual strength side effects of exposure. Arven's quest to heal his Mabostiff ties into this, hinting at the herb's dangerous origins. If true, Titan Pokemon aren't mysterious anomalies. They're living evidence of failed experiments in augmentation. Paldea's professors might not be innocent researchers. They could be responsible for unleashing biochemical nightmares across the region. Every towering crab or bird trainer's face is less a majestic boss battle and more a mutated product of reckless science, hidden behind the cheerful term Titan. The sparkle of discovery may actually be the fallout of a botched super soldier program for Pokémon. Nurse Joys are identical across every city and region, always delivering the same cheerful dialogue when healing Pokémon. Fans usually joke they're just relatives, but one theory suggests something stranger. They share a hive mind. Each Joy isn't an individual, but a node in a network, which explains why they never deviate in speech or behavior. Their uniformity isn't training, it's shared consciousness. This would also explain how Joys always seem to know what a trainer has been through, delivering the same reassurances no matter the region. If true, Pokemon centers aren't staffed by humans at all. They're managed by biological drones, their individuality suppressed in service of efficiency. The smiling faces trainers trust are projections of a single consciousness spread across countless bodies. Every Joy encountered isn't a new person. It's the same entity, repeating itself again and again. The comforting phrase, "We hope to see you again," may not be kindness. It may be a reminder of control. The infamous Pokemon anime seizure incident is often blamed on Porygon, with the episode Electric Soldier Porygon banned worldwide. But conspiracy theorists argue Porygon was scapegoated. The real cause of the flashing lights was Pikachu's attack, not Porygon's actions. However, Pikachu was the franchise mascot, untouchable in terms of branding. To preserve Pikachu's innocence, the blame was shifted onto Porygon, a Pokemon already tied to digital unease. As a result, Porygon and its evolutions virtually disappeared from the anime, despite having nothing to do with the incident. If true, then the Pokemon Company deliberately sacrificed an entire evolutionary line to protect its golden mascot. Porygon wasn't a villain. It was collateral damage in a corporate cover-up. Pikachu caused the problem, but Porygon paid the price, its legacy forever marked by an event it didn't cause. What looks like safety censorship may actually be brand protection at its darkest, rewriting blame to preserve a global icon. The Pokéradar in Sinnoh lets trainers chain encounters, increasing shiny odds. Most players see it as a clever mechanic, but this theory suggests it's literally RNG exploitation. Each step and reset isn't luck, it's manipulation, intentionally poking at the random number generator that controls encounters. The more consistent your chains, the more you're gaming the system, forcing it to reveal rare spawns. This would mean the Pokéradar wasn't designed as a natural tool, but as a cheat device given to trainers by developers aware of the underlying mechanics. If true, the Pokéradar doesn't just help you find shinies, it teaches players that the Pokémon world is ruled by numbers, probabilities, and patterns. Chaining, then, is less a skill and more a demonstration of how fragile randomness really is. Trainers aren't just searching tall grass, they're learning how to bend reality's code to their will. Every shiny found with the Pokéradar is proof that luck can be hacked. The old chateau in Sinnoh is one of the eeriest locations in the series, filled with spectral encounters and unexplained apparitions. Most fans accept it as a haunted mansion, but a theory suggests the ghosts aren't spirits at all. They're corrupted save files. Just like glitches in the game can produce strange sprites or distorted trainers, the old chateau's hauntings could be fragments of deleted characters or broken data reappearing in physical form. The wandering butler and little girl might not be spirits, they may be leftover NPC data, unable to fully vanish from the system. This would explain why they appear sporadically and never interact beyond eerie stares. If true, the old chateau isn't a supernatural haunting, it's a memory dump, a house where the game's forgotten data is trapped in endless loops. The ghosts, then, aren't dead souls at all, they're corrupted files, replaying fragments of existence that should have been erased long ago. Ditto has always been a strange Pokemon, formless, pink, and able to transform into almost anything. Its uncanny resemblance to Mew, from color to weight, has fueled one of the darkest theories. Ditto are failed man-made bioweapons. During experiments to clone Mew, scientists may have created countless imperfect attempts, blobs that could mimic form but not power. Instead of destroying these failed clones, they may have escaped into the wild, becoming what we now know as Ditto. This would explain why Ditto is found near facilities like Cinnabar Mansion, sites tied to genetic tampering. If true, then Ditto isn't just a quirky mimic, it's living evidence of human experimentation, reminders of how far scientists were willing to go in pursuit of controlling Mew's DNA. Every time a trainer catches a Ditto, they're not capturing a wild Pokemon, they're collecting the discarded leftovers of a failed cloning program, genetic shadows of the Pokemon that started it all. In the original Pokemon Red and Blue, encountering Missing Gnome could permanently corrupt your Hall of Fame records, filling them with scrambled characters and strange Pokemon. Most players dismissed it as harmless glitching, but a theory suggests this wasn't accidental. It was grief coding. The Hall of Fame represents a trainer's legacy, their proudest achievement, and by targeting it specifically, missing notions becomes a punishment. It's as if the game itself mourns or resents the player for exploiting its errors, lashing out by corrupting their records. This reimagines Missing no less as a neutral bug and more as a fragment of code designed to express loss, frustration, or even vengeance. The distorted Hall of Fame isn't just broken data, it's a memorial, a digital scar left behind as the game grieves its own corruption. If true, then Missing no witches isn't an accident. It's a programmed ghost, leaving reminders in the place meant to preserve glory, staining victory with sorrow. The Unown are some of the strangest Pokemon ever created, living letters scattered throughout ruins, seemingly purposeless beyond forming an alphabet. But the theory suggests their language isn't just decoration, it's instructions for reality itself. Each Unown represents a fragment of the Pokemon world's operating code, and when arranged together, they can spell changes into existence. This would explain why Unown are tied to events like the Salation Ruins or the creations of the Pokemon Movie 3's alternate reality. They're not weak psychic types, they're keystrokes, cosmic commands written in living form. If true, then every ruin covered in Unown isn't an archaeological site. It's a script, actively running the universe. The letters trainers dismiss as puzzles might actually be the very instructions holding reality together. Catching an Unown, then, isn't harmless. It's tearing a symbol from the code of existence itself, pocketing a fragment of the language that writes the Pokemon world into being. And the last one, the twist you won't believe, the biggest conspiracy of all, is that you still haven't subscribed. Trainers spend their time chasing shinies, solving ruins, and unraveling mysteries. But somehow, the greatest secret of this channel remains hidden. You're missing subscribe. Think about it. You've just listened to dozens of theories about ghosts, glitches, and gods. But the one thing that still hasn't been caught is your support. Don't let this conspiracy continue. Click subscribe, join the team, and become part of the story. Otherwise, you're the real mystery. Someone who stayed this long without hitting the button.